In life, in general, when we're speaking or when we're writing, we give our opinions in any language. It's normal. In English, lots of people tend to say, in my opinion. Now, when you're doing the IELTS speaking test, that's a fine phrase. I mean, it's a correct phrase. But the thing is, there are lots of different things that you could say instead to give your opinion than just saying, in my opinion. It's kind of overused. And I think that if you were to use a different one, it will get recognized by the IELTS examiner and you'll get more marks for vocabulary. So I would recommend using different ones. And it's not just for IELTS. All the stuff that you're learning here is for daily life as well, because IELTS preparation prepares you for daily life English, especially in the speaking section, because you use these phrases I've given you so far in the videos in everyday life. So it's important to use different, less common phrases in the speaking section, because they will get recognized and you will get more marks, especially for vocabulary when you do this. So instead of using, in my opinion, don't do that anymore because it's used so much. So try to say something different. So the ones that I have for you are these. The first one that you can use is from my perspective. Now, a lot of people say in my perspective. We also have from my point of view. People say in my point of view. That's fine, it's accepted, but it's better to say from my point of view. It's the correct way of saying it. So if the IELTS examiner asks you, for example, in section 3, let's say the topic is about luxury items and they ask you, what do you think are the most common luxury items that people want to buy nowadays? And you start with, well, in my opinion. It's better to say, well, from my perspective. So try use the elongation there. From my perspective, from my point of view. So these are good opinion phrases rather than just saying, in my opinion. There are other phrases as well. You could say, to my mind. You could say, the way I see it. These are different things you can say. So you don't have to know too many of them, but knowing I was going to say in my point of view, from my point of view, from my perspective. So people just say in my view. So that's something that I recommend to say. You could also say, if I were to think of this. So using a conditional, you can say if I were, so it's a second conditional, if I were to look at it this way. So if they say, what do you think are the biggest problems in terms of the environment these days? And you could say, in my opinion, I think this. So try to avoid I think, I believe, in my opinion. You could say, well, the way I see it, and if I were to look at it from the perspective of this. So that's another thing you can do as well. When you're giving opinions, you can look at it from a different way. So you could say from the perspective of a doctor, or from a doctor's perspective, from a medical perspective, or from a medical point of view, from a health perspective. So these things are very good when you're giving opinions based on health. From a health perspective, unhealthy food is too cheap these days because blah, blah. So I said these days, right? Now the reason I've said that is because you would recognize that phrase. It's a very commonly used phrase. I think it's another idea to try to use something different. So instead of saying these days, you could say in this day and age. You could say in the modern era. You could say currently or presently. There are different ways to say in this day and age. So you can add them in with your opinion phrase. So from my perspective, in this day and age, most people want to buy a smartphone as a luxury item, especially the latest one. And then if you were talking about that, you could add in the phrase cutting edge, because cutting edge means the latest technology, the most modern technology. So people want to get their hands on is another one. So you could say get their hands on, or get your hands on means basically just to get it in an excited way. So you could say, from my point of view, in this day and age, or currently or presently, lots of young people really want to get their hands on the latest cutting edge smartphone. So compare that to, well, in my opinion, young people these days want to get the latest smartphone because it's good technology, you know. So it's not wrong, it's just more basic vocabulary. So you'd be more expected to use high value language like cutting edge and get your hands on. But again, going back to the opinion phrases, it's important to do it that way as well. Now, if you want to give a negative opinion, you can also use this phrase, well, if you ask me. That's when a negative opinion is coming. So if the examiner asks you, do you think people are becoming concerned about global warming at the moment? And let's say you don't think so. You could say, well, if you ask me, people aren't doing enough to stop global warming, So rather than just saying, in my opinion, I think people should do more, you could say, well, if you ask me, people should be doing more. They're not doing enough. So especially when you're giving a strong negative kind of opinion. So I definitely recommend that for sure. Let's go into a little bit more formal vocabulary for giving opinion phrases, but not for personal opinion phrases, for impersonal opinion phrases, when we're talking about people in general. So if people are aware of something, or everybody's aware of it, or everybody knows about this, you can use a specific phrase, but there's different ways of saying it. So you could say it is, then you have generally, widely, and commonly. And then you can add in the word acknowledged, accepted, or believed, or held. So you could say, it is generally accepted that, it is widely held that, it is commonly acknowledged that. So we're talking about people in general. This is very good for IELTS Speaking Section 3. So you could say for Section 3, it is generally accepted in the modern era that governments need to do more to encourage people to work on reducing global warming, or something like that. In Section 3, they're talking about different kinds of topics, so you have to use those kind of phrases. So that's what we're going to do next, actually, in IELTS Speaking Section 3. So have a look at the next video and we'll go to that.